Hello, hello, Mimi Makers. Looks like I was live longer than I thought. It says 20 seconds, and here I was just staring at the screen. This is a unscheduled live video, and totally okay if I'm just going to be talking to myself because nobody was prepared that this was going to happen. But really, I just wanted to create this video because yesterday I posted a picture on Facebook in multiple forums about this quilted coat that I have made, which I have right here. It's this is the jacket, and the pictures also will be at the beginning of this video. And I have gotten so much positive feedback and a lot of questions on how I made this because there's no end-to-end tutorial on how to create a coat like this. And I'm just going to show this really quick. This is a long coat that looks like this with a hood. And this is it. So I just wanted to give a bit of a step-by-step of how I did it. Oh, hey, Marion. Marion was one of the people that asked about it. I just wanted to give you the step-by-step of what I did and maybe also some takeaways of some things that I would maybe do differently or other options, because there's not one way to create a quilted coat like this. This is just the way that I went about creating this one, which was my very first one. All right, so let's dive right into it. So number one is that the focal point of my coat was supposed to be the back panel. And I had seen this on another person that had done it with this quilt, because this quilt specifically lends itself really, really well for coat pattern because of its symmetry. So it's like it's basically half square triangles, and it works really, really well as a panel like this. So this specific one is the Gather quilt by Suzy Quilts, and the size I made was a baby size quilt, because so what I did is I printed all the pattern pieces of the coat that I wanted to make, and then I measured each pattern piece to see that the fabrics I'm creating are big enough. So essentially I made fabrics that then I made into the coat. So the baby quilt was big enough to cover this coat, which for me goes almost, when I wear it, it goes all the way to my knees, and I am 5'8". So 172 centimeters is my height. So this is a really, really big panel, and it worked really well for this to do the baby quilt size. So this, and you can get the requirements for this particular quilt when you buy the pattern, but you can do really any quilt pattern, or maybe even a quilt that you didn't fully finish, or a quilt that you happen to have, but you're not using it as a jacket as a blanket anymore, and you could cut that up. So essentially, it's like I created this quilt to be the fabric of the jacket that I'm going to make. So I created, I made 3 big pieces of fabric. So number one was the back panel. So I pieced this, which had 10 different colors. I specifically used the Freckles quilting cotton. Then there's some rifle paper in there. And the Freckles is by Cotton and Steel, which is available in the Mimi shop. There's some grunge in there, and there's also some thatched in there, but really you can choose any colors you like. I also specifically, as the accent color, you can see the dark triangles is the same color as the rest of my coat. So I needed a lot of that fabric. So of the blue fabric, I want to say I used about 5 meters of that fabric in the coat. I mean, there's still some patches here and there because there's a certain way I had to cut it that I still have, which I'm going to use to maybe make like little bags or something later on, because it's still a fabric that I made. And then for the lining fabric, I needed just as much, about 5 meters, and then whatever I used for the back panel. But as I said, there's still some extras left over. So number one, I did piece the quilt, and then I made my quilt sandwich. So my quilt sandwich has the outer. So in this case, it was my baby size quilt. And then I have a batting in between, and I used the Pellon bamboo cotton blend. I think it's an 80-20 blend. And then my lining fabric, which is this rifle paper fabric. As you can see, like it's all all over the inside of my coat. So I created my quilt sandwich, and then I quilted this fabric. So you can't really see many of the quilt lines because in this case, I didn't want any of the threads to go through my triangles. So I did a stitch in the ditch and I quilted right in here. So for the outer on all of this, I used a Madeira poly neon thread to match the dark blue. And then as my bobbin thread, I actually matched the Madeira poly neon thread to match this. So you can see the pattern. Can you see that? So you can actually see the pattern where I quilted, but you can't, there's no contrasting thread. So I did that for the back panel. And then to create this fabric, which is the rest of the coat, it's all dark blue. I kind of mimicked the pattern on here. It's not exactly the same, but the same thing. Because I couldn't quilt, or I couldn't by hand on my machine, such a big piece of fabric. So I had two fabric pieces that were about 1.5 meters each. So 1.5 meters of the dark blue, then 1.5 meters of my quilt batting, and then 1.5 meters of my lining fabric that I spray basted together. And then I quilted it in this pattern with a quilt guide that I added. So it's about, I think it was a 3-inch spacing. So I did 3-inch squares first, and then I did diagonal lines through every other of the crosses. And then I got this pattern. I don't know if you can see this. So this is a sample. I got this pattern out of it. So now I had 3 pieces. So I had my back piece, my baby quilt, and I had 2 pieces of fabric like this, which were my solids. So they were about 1.5 meters in full width of the fabric that I had. So now, because this is all 100% cotton, I wanted to make sure I pre-wash this before I sew my actual jacket. So I serged all the edges very much like this, so that none of the batting could fall out and the fabric wouldn't fray. So I serged it all. They were not necessary. It doesn't have to be pretty or straight. It's really just to protect it while washing. And then I threw all of this in the wash, and then I threw everything in the dryer so that we get some good shrinkage out of it. So now you might not need this much fabric. I needed this much fabric because this is actually rather a large coat. So it's really long. It has a hood. It has long sleeves. And you can make this really with any pattern that is made for a woven jacket. Anything that is slightly oversized will do. So what I would encourage you to just get your pattern printed, or if you're using a projector, just to measure all your pattern pieces to determine how much fabric you need, especially if it's, because usually, I don't know, like in our fabric store, usually fabrics are wider than quilting cotton. So I had to account for the fact that the quilting cotton fabrics are only like, I think 115 centimeters wide, as opposed to usually our jacket fabrics are 150 centimeters wide. That's why I needed more length to make sure my pattern pieces will fit on there, and also the shrinkage. So now, after I had washed and dried all these fabrics, the pieces were a little bit smaller, but still everything fit really nicely. So then I cut all my pieces out. So I laid I used a rotary cutter, my big cutting mat, and then I rotary cut all the pieces out. So now this pattern particularly would have come with pattern pieces for the outer of the coat and then for the lining of the coat. But because I already have a lining, because I decided to quilt it together, I didn't need those pattern pieces. So I only cut out the outer pattern pieces and just ignored all of the facings and the linings. But it is an option to just, if you want to sew a pattern with a traditional lining, you could even just do a quilt sandwich with 2 fabrics. So I could have done the outer fabric and just the batting and quilted those together and washed it, and then sewed the lining in, but then you don't have the quilt lines on it. So I really wanted this effect, but you can also just sew a regular lining so that you have the seams not exposed. So that is up to you, but the way I did it is I quilted everything together and then I sewed it. So after I had cut out all my pieces, all my pattern pieces, the edges, so after you cut it, your edges will be open like this. And so I didn't want this to fizzle out. And I also didn't want, if there was like a bigger gap, for it to not really line up. So then again, all of my pattern pieces, when they were cut out, I serged the edges of everything before piecing it together. So that just, first of all, it made it nice, and like it makes it really nice and tight when the edges are serged, and it makes it much easier to piece. I opted for a fun variegated thread on the blue because, as you can see, after piecing, the blue is the color that you see inside. So you could also match the blue so that it's not visible, but you know, I like me some good color. So I used a variegated thread. I can't remember the name of the color, but it was one of our Fantastico threads that have, it's changing color from like blue to purple, and it just fit really, really well with my color scheme. And then I just did a gray on the other side because you can't see it later on anyways. Okay, so I hope everybody is still following along. So I had that done. So then I started piecing it together. I did the piecing on my regular sewing machine. I didn't serge it because I didn't want the bulky seam. So after this, I was piecing it together. So you start with your shoulders, and then you insert your sleeves. And after every seam that I pieced together, so let's say the shoulder was my first one. So I pieced it together, and then I immediately, I want to say I pressed it open, but really I just held it open with my hands. I could have ironed it, but I didn't. You could though, if you wanted to. But it was easy enough to just hold it open. And then I straight stitched with like a single line along each of these to hold them down firmly. And then what this does is actually it creates a really nice top stitch on the outside. And you know what? It doesn't even have to be that straight. I feel like it wasn't that straight, and like everything's a little bit wobbly and wonky on there, but it has an organic look to it. So my lines are not perfectly straight, but I'm very, very much in love with how it turned out. So anyhow, after every seam that I sewed, I made sure to top stitch it open from the inside. I just matched my bobbin thread to match the outer color, which was the blue. And then it also made it much easier when you have intersecting seams. It's much easier to go over that. And yeah, that's pretty much what I did. Like I kept on going like that. The only seam that I was not able to do that, which is the sleeve, because I don't have a machine where I can sew into the sleeve, but it's actually not like I can't notice it. It's not a slim fit sleeve, so it doesn't bother me at all. And then yeah, so that's how I went about it. So my whole inside of my coat has this beautiful peach color fabric, and then the outside of my coat has mainly this blue fabric. And then I installed some snaps. So I used the Prim Anorak snaps, and I just marked an equal spacing of how I like them. Punched a little hole in there, used some fray check to make sure that the holes don't fizzle out. And look, there's still some stray threads that I need to cut off. So now I have these. I think these look really nice because they play off really well of the stars on the print. But so I have these snaps on there, which worked out really nicely. I put a little label inside, which is one of the Kylie in the Machine labels from the countdown calendar this year. And actually, I have to say that I didn't even put on the pockets yet. So I have my pockets here. I was so excited. I couldn't put on the pockets, but as I was wearing it yesterday, I did realize I really, really need my pockets. So these are going to be the outer pockets that I still need to put on. And I like to put those on, you know, now so that I can make sure that I place them right. And I feel like there was one more thing. Oh, yes. So originally, this coat had facings for all of this. And dare I say, I just didn't feel like doing it. I didn't want to do the facing. So it had hem facings and all of that. but I just hemmed it. I just turned the corner over and I just straight stitched it. And I think it's beautiful the way it is. It is the slightly faster way of doing it. Yeah, you can see, so I have all these exposed seams, but I think that I finished them really nicely. And this was actually my dear friend Hisai's idea. Like originally my whole hood was going to be blue, but then she noticed that I had a piece of my quilt left, so I did a stripe of this in the middle. And yeah, so this took many hours, and I have to say I enjoyed every second of it. I have not done such a time intense project before, but I really enjoyed the slow sewing of it. I really enjoyed creating this intricate pattern on my fabrics, and I'm actually already looking forward to making another one. Thank you, Danielle. I'm looking forward to making another one. I know that there's other great patterns out there that really lend themselves to making jackets like this. And I hope that I maybe over the holidays will have some time to put together a little blog post with the things that I have found so far that work really well. But yeah, I'm really excited about this. I'm gonna make a shorter one next time. I will make sure that I'll better document this, because I didn't really realize that I was gonna get so many questions, but I love that everybody's so excited with me about this, and I really hope that I'm gonna get to see more of these pieces in the future, and that people take some time for themselves to create these beautiful masterpieces, and just to enjoy some sewing time and really the whole craft of making a garment that is here to last, because I'm going to wear this a lot. So I was going to wear this at the shop today, at the Mimi shop, because I'm usually always cold, and there I say I was hot. I was so hot in this, so I had to take it off and switch to my Christmas sweater. But yes, if you do come to the Mimi shop, I will have it here on display, at least for now. And please don't hesitate to ask more questions if you have any. And I hope that this was helpful to explain on how I created my coat. And I would love to hear more conversations and tips and little tidbits and pieces that other people maybe have had in their journey, just to help each other out on how we can go about creating more of these stunning pieces, because there's definitely more than one way of doing it. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you all soon in hopefully in the Mimi shop or online or wherever we see each other. Bye for now.